Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 98 of the Whitey and Will Sports Show. Today is Sunday, January 14th, 2024, and we got a full week of basketball in the rearview mirror to talk about. But specifically, we're going to spend a lot of time, I think, at the beginning of our show tonight, discussing the really nice night that they had at T-Town last night, Saturday night, the 100 years of Teutopolis boys basketball ceremony. They didn't, unfortunately, didn't get a win over a really good Tuscola team last night, but it was everything else about the evening was fantastic, and we need to really dig into that one. But we got lots of other stuff. It was an important week for the Effingham girls basketball team. Unfortunately, they took a tough conference loss that kind of took them probably out of contention for the Apollo Championship, and then some. Uh, a big night for Altamont girls last night too. I want to make sure that we touch on that. And the NTC girls tournament is next week. It starts
Yeah,
tomorrow. So we'll get into that. But first things first, had a full house at JH Griffin last night. Actually, you probably could have fit a few more people in there, which was a little surprising to me. Maybe the
right.
weather kind of scared people off a little
I
bit.
think the weather did. I really do. It was cold, Whitey. And
Yeah.
then I came outside to the surprise of snow, and I
Oh,
left
yeah.
before it was over. We had
Hmm.
other things happening, so we
Yeah.
left probably 3 minute mark in the fourth quarter. So
It
yeah,
was, yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the game in a moment, but just sort of laying out the program that they did between the JV and the varsity games, they recognized all the, they whether that person was able to be in attendance or not, they recognized every one of the nine coaches who has been the head coach at T-Town, and of course the couple of really nice moments came out of that because
yes,
uh, I know Lawrence Carey, he kind of had a tough holiday season from what I understood and had,
yes.
but he was able to be there. Uh,
As they say, Lawrence was a game time decision
yeah, but
because earlier in the day, I think it was maybe Cody's wife told Ann he was very doubtful.
yeah,
And then we heard he's going to be here. He's going to get here about 5 minutes before time. And then I think the running clock sped him up, but he got there. It was so good to see Lawrence. And you know what? He looked pretty good.
yeah, they had him in a wheelchair, but he came out to the middle of the floor and they got him stood up, and I think he wanted that, and
Yeah, he wanted to stand. I'm not so sure Cody and Doris are on board, but you got a physical therapist on one side of you, and you know,
yeah, it was really, I mean, listen, I'm not gonna lie to you. It got a little misty in there for me when he came out there. The crowd responded very well. And obviously I mean, you look at the overall records, and he won 443 games against 173 losses. And that was the fun thing, by the way. We were where Matt and I were sitting to broadcast. We're sitting amongst the Tuscola fans, and it was kind of fun to kind of just look at the looks on their faces as some of those one loss records for your JH Griffins and your Lawrence Carries, and most importantly your King Crawfords were read off. They're like, you just kind of sucking in their breath a little bit, like, wow,
yeah. And
we
I
knew
was
they were good, but
sitting
we didn't know they were that good.
right behind the Tuscola bench, and Quinn and the little point guard, they were right there. I mean, I could have reached out and almost hit him. And you can see a couple times they'd look at each other. Are you kidding? So some pretty gaudy numbers presented
Yes.
last.
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching this show, you probably already know that Ken Crawford went 612 and 150 during his time at T-Town, and that he was there, of course. Ken was able to make it, and that was, that brought the house down whenever he came out on the floor.
Yeah,
And
Ken got the second standing O of the night. Lawrence got the first.
yep.
And as Kenny Crawford is so good at, he gave me the little one finger salute in the bleachers. He sat a couple rows behind me, and then
Well,
he
and
hollered at me, and I turned around and he snuck it in.
And I'd like to know, if he kind of because he knew he was going to have to come out there, so he could have just been sort of standing down toward the floor waiting to come out. But he was in the bleachers and kind of made an entrance with Patty,
He
and
was about third or he's probably fourth row up, fifth row up, and
it
he
took a couple minutes to
yeah
to make that happen. And I think he probably didn't mind that it allowed everybody a chance to get up on their feet and
he
show the proper respect.
and you talked about little misty eye during that standing O for him, and his wife Patty was out there with him. And
Absolutely.
then on the 86 team, couple times I kind of saw looked like he was kind of gathering himself.
Yeah. Well, there were
I think, to be honest, I really think that first standing O when Kenny got out there, you could see him really stoking it in and just, um, you know, Lawrence had the same thing, and Lawrence loved it, and you could see him light up like a Christmas
oh
tree.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
it really was. And I think the best line of the night from the voice, Rich Nieberge, when he said that, Lawrence's plaque was being presented by his daughter Doris and his grandson Cody. And then he said, Cody, I'm not sure. He says, I do recognize him. He coaches somewhere, but I'm not sure. And when you got chuckle in the crowd, I told Cody afterwards, I said, hey, you didn't get booed. So that was good.
Well, speaking of, I had to explain that one to the Tuscola folks around me too. They kind of were a little confused by that one. And I was like, yeah, he coaches at St. Anthony. And they're
Yeah.
like,
Well, and the
oh,
thing
yes.
was, I was shocked because the Tuscola bench, their kids kind of looked at each other and kind of gave a shoulder shrug. And I thought, you've played in the last 2 years in a row.
Oh,
Um,
they're high school kids. They don't care.
yeah, but the team you have circled on your calendar, I think you would know, which they may be playing here in a shootout in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I haven't seen the schedule
The
for,
pairings aren't out yet.
yeah. And St. Anthony's not usually in that, I don't think. They didn't do the
They've
girls.
always been, I think they were maybe last year, but I think they did. They switched over. The conference convinced them to switch um,
T-Town
from the
shootout.
T-Town shootout to that one. The
Yeah.
other, and Chet's girls coming out and giving him his
Yes.
plaque when he was
Yes.
introduced. That was kind of neat. The teams. It was kind of funny. I haven't talked to Bob. I didn't get a chance. My goal was to go to the KC Hall last night and talk to a lot of those guys afterwards. I was going to tell Bob Zaruzin that Theo Hemmon has a lot more hair than he does, but I didn't get a chance to see Bob.
There were a lot of guys from the 86 team there.
Yes, very
well
many.
represented. And just explain to people real quick, they recognized the four teams that had state placements. Obviously,
state placements, not just teams that went to state.
yeah,
state
because
placement.
And Matt and I don't remember if we were on the air or if that was before we went on, but we're like, think about how that they don't even have time in their program to be able to recognize every team that went to state. When going to state even one time is something that most schools talk about forever. And here you had to bring home some hardware before before you could make it into this program. So you're talking
86 was very well represented.
Yes.
And then 2000, very well represented. Kind of neat. Todd Krager's brother was out there. Todd was a dominant player on that 86 team, and who died tragically in an accident the following fall before his senior season. Andrew Gobzinski was on the 2000 team. His two kids were out there representing him. Pretty good moment. That 2000 team, pretty good ball club.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. They had, if you lined up everybody in that building last night who was on the floor and said, okay, who's the all-time leading scorer? And Tuscola would never pick the kid who's the all-time leading scorer.
Yeah.
They'd look at all these people and they'd say him. They'd never pick Mitch Custer. But, we know Mitch could flat out play. And then you had
By the way, Mitch's son did a pretty good job at halftime at the shooting. Didn't make
when
any.
He went out to shoot, I texted him and I said, "Uh-oh, is he going to shoot better than his dad?" And when it was done, I got a reply, "No." was all it said.
He
So
darn near made the half court shot, hit the
yes,
heel.
he did. He did. And Charlie, at the end of our Christmas tournament, him and a young man from Lincoln Way East were out there playing a little one-on-one, and it's on our Facebook page. Morgan had video.
Yeah, saw that.
2017, and I was joking. I said, I had a hard time standing for them. You know,
Yes.
good group of guys. So I'll tell you what, we
Yeah.
had 3 battles that year, and great guys. I mean, I know them all very well. And then last year from Chet's team, and I think pretty much every kid that dressed varsity at any point during the season was recognized with that team.
Yep.
But
Yep.
it was good. And it's kind of funny. You see some of those guys who are just graduated from last year, that first year away at school or away working, and a couple pounds have been put on by a couple of those guys. You can see little rounder faces, and it was funny. I was laughing about that.
I wouldn't know anything about it.
No, not at all. And then, the administrators were out, the ADs. We got to go out there. It's good. Andy Johnson came in, had a red Effingham coat on. I heard some people sitting by us kind of heckling him, and he had his T-Town shirt on underneath. And Cody had his Christmas tournament, which was Navy, had his Christmas tournament top on, and so it was good to see that,
Yeah.
But and then when they invited and then I was out in the hallway. I didn't see it, but I actually got to come in real late for the picture when they invited everyone out. But there was a lot of people on that floor.
Yeah, there were. And if you want to see the whole thing, I think that the Teutopolis High School Facebook page, I think it was the Teutopolis High School, Teutopolis School District. I know
50, I think their Facebook page has a video of it.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it, but I think that's where it was. I think they were videoing.
Yeah, I just happened to notice that Beth Sturgeon, who was Beth Fearday in high school, went to high school with me in Neoga. Her husband, Matt, of course, is a superintendent there now. And I saw her videotaping at
I was going to say, she was sitting at the scores table videotaping. I give shout out to Derek Zaruzin. I know when I was AD, we did a program recognizing the guys who were living members from the 30s and 40s, which was a really nice thing. But it's a hard endeavor to pull off. This was a lot bigger, a lot more people obviously involved, but I thought it went really, really well. Had some fun talking to Rodney Grimsley most of the third quarter. Rodney was Kenny's JV coach, and I was Dave Martin's JV coach, and we had some battles. I'm here to end fresh soft, and I got to tell a story because Rodney brought it up last night. He said, "Wilson, you and I have the best story to tell of anybody in the building," and I just laughed. I go, "Yeah, the NTC Fresh Soft Tournament Championship game, because it's at Neoga. Traditionally, it was always at Neoga. And we're both in that mini gym shooting around while the third place game's going on. Power goes out, freezing rain, ice storm. Neoga doesn't have power. It's done. And they come in the gym and said, hey, we're not going to get it back on for, an hour or more. So I called Dave Bartlett. He went over and fired up the furnace and turned the lights on in the golf gym. And it was right out of Hoosiers, baby, because here's a caravan of St. Anthony and T-Town fans and buses. And then the conference wouldn't let us do it unless we finished the third place game, which had like 4 minutes to go. And I don't even think it was a close game. So you had those two teams. So you had a caravan of all these people from Neoga going to Effingham, driving about 20 miles an hour because it was slick. And then we got to golf gym, and Bartlett had the lights on, and we went in and we finished the third place game. And Rodney and I, to be honest, we both looked at each other and we said, who won? And I finally said, Rod, I think you beat me because I only beat you later in the year. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
It was a nice night, though. It was a fantastic program. And you mentioned Derek Zaruzin. Anybody else involved in planning the thing out for Teutopolis?
Yeah, and I know Carlo Daters was running around helping point people in the right direction. And there's a lot of people involved. It was shout out to those guys. Derek, Carla, I'm sure were the two main people putting it all together.
Mhm.
Tanner Lawson, the principal was probably involved as well, but
Mhm.
huge. And I know Chet was too. So, um,
You want to talk about the game itself because
yeah, game started out.
and the thing is just to lay this out, Tuscola up until I don't know last week was the number one team in the state. Uh,
Undefeated,
Took a couple of losses. They were actually
two
coming into the
losses.
game on a two-game losing streak. They'd lost to
Yes,
Shelbyville and then to Tolono Unity.
Alone
Uh,
Unity.
the second loss, a lot easier for them to swallow than the first, I'm guessing. Although I think Unity's a bit of a rival there, so maybe
Right.
not.
In Shelbyville, I was told some football players are finally kind of got their basketball legs and are really contributing. And Shelbyville's going to be kind of a dark horse in the postseason.
Is that right? Yeah, they had sort of been so this year in terms of their
Right.
results. And so, but anyway, Tuscola is still the number two team in Class 1A, a very talented group. Obviously, they went to state last year, and have a lot of guys back from that group. And they got off to a really good start.
Yes. And
They were ahead what?
8-0, I think.
Yeah, it was an 8-0 run and 17-11 by the time the quarter came to an end. And
And it was, I kind of felt like, um, and people who have played in or coached in that St. Anthony T-Town game, it's always the first 2 minutes always seem to be disappointing because both teams are so geeked up to play and
yeah,
there's so much pageantry. And then the game doesn't start out well. And I felt like T-Town came out a little flat. And when I say flat, that it's not that they weren't ready to play, but I felt like they were so excited and felt a little pressure. Hey, you know, the Hall
yeah,
of Fame's here, baby. All the names are here. The real Mitch Custer's here. And I felt like they were, I always tell Mitch that. I said, hey, the real Mitch Custer's going to be here watching you. And I just felt like they got off to a rocky start. And Tuscola came out, hey, we're burning the place down, baby. We don't care who you got here. We're showing, and I know I text you, and their little guard, who I think is probably their best player, number 3,
uh-huh,
he buried a 3 and kind of turned and saluted to the T-Town crowd down there just past half court, where that's the
yeah,
section of the crowd that will let you know it if you're bothering them. Trust me,
yeah,
I know many of those people personally.
yeah, and that's
And I thought, oh, you may wake some people up here that you don't want to wake up. And eventually, T-Town kind of got their act together and started playing well and went on a nice little run. And I think took the lead not till the early third quarter.
right. Yes, they got
Yeah,
they
got that lead, and you felt the building had the momentum, and the crowd was waiting on something to happen to erupt. They needed another 3-pointer to erupt and get the lead to 5 or something, and it didn't happen. And then
they
Tuscola then it kind of went back and forth, and then from that fourth quarter, Whitey, I really couldn't tell you a single play in it, and
well,
I left nervous.
so T-Town, I mean, first of all, they tightened it up in the second quarter, like you mentioned. Garrett Gaddis hit that half court three-pointer
At the end of the
at the end of
third,
the third quarter, and I kind of wondered and thought at the time, even though that didn't give them a lead or anything, I thought that might be the turning point here. That might be
oh,
what gets the roller coaster going downhill for T-Town.
valid point, and it just
But
it
it
didn't.
comes at the end of a quarter, so everybody's got a minute to kind of shake it off too. So it's hard to say whether that can really be a momentum builder or not. And as it turns
Right,
out, it wasn't.
right, and it was
The fourth quarter, T-Town and I'm not saying it's right or wrong or what, because you take the shots that you get, right? But they shot a lot of three-pointers in the fourth quarter and didn't make very many of them. At one
but
point,
it
they were
seemed
0 for
like
5 or 0 for 6, and they ended up
yeah,
1 for 9.
it seemed like those were the only looks they were getting open. And I don't know if it was a breakdown in spacing, but they had opportunities in the paint, but
Mm,
there was like, you know, 40 people in line at a snack bar and they're closing, man. There was no place to. Every shot was contested by multiple people and not always just the defender. Sometimes, it was just, and they just didn't get those good looks inside where I thought they had some opportunities, but it was just too crowded.
Yeah.
And their only good looks, clean looks they were getting were threes. And unfortunately, they weren't going down like
No.
they have in the past. And it just, and you and I talked before the game, that fourth quarter, offensively, they played like they were, you know, early in the year when they were struggling for an identity and having trouble scoring. They kind of went back to that in that fourth quarter. I thought they played well. I'll tell you what, from the last 2 minutes of that first quarter on, I thought they played really well up until that point. And then it was almost like a regression. And there was a lot of factors. But yeah, ball just didn't go in the hole.
Well, and that's the thing is like fair or not, like Logan Lawson doesn't score a lot of points, but he got some open looks there, and I sort of I just expect one of those 3-pointers to go down because
Right?
that's sort of his role on the team, and some nights that's just not going to happen,
Who
and
did they
it
beat?
didn't.
Was it last week? They won a big game and he buried.
He made 4 3-pointers in a pretty short span, and
Yeah,
he can do that.
yeah, he's streaky.
And they you know they it didn't work out that way. A couple of things to touch on though. I did think that I mean, obviously Garrett Gaddis did the stuff that a team leader needs to do in that game. I thought he was definitely up to the challenge. Definitely played the way he needed to. Alex Kramer had a really good first quarter, kind of helped T-Town keep from just
He
getting
brought
blown
him.
in
He
that
kept
game.
him from getting blown out. You're
Yeah.
right there.
He what he does well, and there's two parts to it, but he finds the right opportunities to make the move toward the basket without the ball in his hand, and his teammates do a pretty good job of finding him. Some really good stuff there as far as Kramer getting to the rim and getting some layups. And he also hit a 3-pointer in that first quarter. And then Austin Blummer, who was trying to check into the game. There was about 2-3 minutes of uninterrupted game action at the end of the first quarter where there were probably 4 total subs sitting at the score table trying to come in, and they could never get in until the quarter ended. And Austin Blummer was one of them, and then he comes in at the beginning of the second quarter, and he was dominant for a stretch there, making some pretty strong post
Couple
moves.
possessions, good rebounds. Austin's a strong kid, and he's really improved footwork and such. And I thought he did a good job because Tuscola's big man's physical and quick.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
thought he was able to physically keep him from backing. He was able to back Joey
Yeah.
down on the block a lot.
Yeah.
Blummer said, "No, I'm bigger, I'm stronger. You're not backing me down." And he helped spur the comeback. I thought he
Yeah.
really did.
And it's nothing against Joey. It's just
No,
the dominant post for Tuscola was able to move
yeah,
him without doing anything like that you could get called for a foul on. It was just
right. Just it's physics.
yeah, yeah,
He was Austin became tougher to move, and then that they quit going to that kid, and he pretty much. Again, I don't know what happened the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game because even when I was there, I wasn't seeing it.
hmm
But yeah, he was, you know, but Chet's team they'll be fine.
yeah. And
I
another
mean,
thing,
I mean, just think that a couple of their losses are to Tuscola and Tolono, two of the top rated teams. Olney, who's now ranked in 3A, getting rankings on Aaron Britton's poll. So,
yeah,
um,
and a really
yeah,
good Highland team, you know,
yeah,
which was their second game of the day after playing triple overtime. And not to
yeah.
make any excuses for anybody, but
No, but
that would be very difficult to do. Um,
yeah,
Also, keep in mind that Mitch Custer didn't play very much in the second half. Maybe I don't. He had something. He had something bugging him injury wise in the first half, and he kind of tried to play through it, and then they eventually just decided we don't. We it's just not the right time to try to. I mean, Chet said post game, he's like, if this were a regional game, he would have he would have insisted to be out there, and we would have
Right.
let him do it, but in this
Yeah.
situation, even though it's a big game against an opponent that you want to
Right.
beat, you know, uh,
But sometimes
this
you got
wasn't
to
the right
look
time.
and say you got to give the kid a chance. Hey,
Yeah.
it's not worth you aggravating something and missing a couple games.
And Mitch is
Um,
he's not a big scorer, but he's a
right,
big part of what they do offensively,
right.
nonetheless. And
And
so,
defensively, I thought Zach Nieberg did a good job kind of filling that role of harassing
uh-huh.
the guard, and he did. And
And Tyler
Zach
Prummer,
had a couple looks and didn't want to pull the trigger last night.
yeah, he did make the only 3-pointer that T-Town got in the fourth quarter, but
Right.
yeah. I mean, listen, Tyler Prummer did a really nice job defensively and rebounding, I thought. And another one of those guys is not going to put up huge numbers, but
Right.
they're not the same team without him. So and listen, Tuscola is a fantastic team, okay? The Sweetenham kid that you mentioned, the little guard,
He's
um,
a nice player.
he can shoot from anywhere. He can go to the rim. He can pull up mid range. He can hit the 3-pointer. He's an excellent ball handler. Does a lot of nice things for them. They
Who's their other guard?
well, Josiah Horton is the other one.
Yes. He's
Horton's a
quick.
quick. He's a quick player. He wasn't making a ton of shots for them. He did hit a couple of 3-pointers here and there, and it seemed like
Defensively, he
fairly
caused a
big
lot of
moments.
problems.
But one thing I thought Tolono really did well was that they got out to the comfortable lead in the first quarter, and then when it evaporated, they didn't fall apart. Okay, and that's the
And I
sign.
could see, I thought that was a possibility. Here they threw the big haymaker to start the game, and you know, T-Town got up off the mat, came back, and eventually took a lead. And you thought, oh, but Tuscola answered, and that was big. Now, the Quinn kid scored his 1,000th point last night.
He did. He made a free throw. He needed
Right.
14 points, and he made a free throw at the end that got him right there.
Yeah.
Yep, and they took the time to recognize him. There were only about 10
Oh,
seconds left in the game, and it was still somewhat in doubt, but I don't. I mean, it was the right thing to do. But I'm
well,
but I'm
I
sure
agree.
everybody at T-Town's bench was kind of this game's already kind of you're watching it slip away, and now you got to stop and do this. I'm sure there were things they would have rather been doing, but
But that's what you're supposed to do.
yep. And Tuscola didn't listen. Any kind of like 50-50 call that night did not go Tuscola's way, and they rolled with
Yeah.
those
And
punches too. So,
I
yeah.
wasn't, again, I wasn't, I was in a fog. So it
Yep.
was what it was. All right, let's move. Who did T-Town play earlier in the week? They got a
St.
nice
Joe,
win.
yeah, it was
Beat St. Joe.
yeah, it was St. Joe Ogden. They beat let me get the score here. They
Beat them by about 17,
53-40 was your final there. So
13.
that
Okay.
was so T-Town's
Good
12
win.
T-Town's 12-6, but their strength of schedule, according to Aaron Britton, is number 4 in all of Class 2A.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you take that record with a grain of salt. There is not a loss in
Right.
there that didn't make you a better team.
Right.
What was I gonna say? I had something right there that was gonna just come out of my mouth, and now I've lost it. But
That's all right.
but they have certainly challenged themselves. T-Town's girls, we might as well just stay with T-Town here real quick. By the way, the boys have they go to Danville Tuesday, which is a long way to go for a weeknight game. But
Mhm.
then they've got Prairie Central coming in on Saturday, so another big Saturday home game for them um, next week. T-Town's girls, uh, they had they had a they played Bethalto on Monday night and lost that one by 17. Bethalto's good, they're
Yeah. Good 3A school.
Yep, and then they played Flora Thursday night, got a nice little tune-up win there. Beat them by 35, 36 points. Then they had to play Taylorville yesterday to open the Highland tournament. and Taylorville got them by 13, 56-43. I don't have any other details from that other than they were beaten, but Taylorville, I've seen Taylorville and they're good, you know. I mean, there's no shame in losing to them, but that you know, that's Highland for you. You play that first round game
That
and
tournament's
yeah.
a great girls tournament.
Yeah, and so now the girls will turn around and play Belleville East on Tuesday night. If they lose, they're done. If they win, then they'll play again on Wednesday against either Waterloo or Collinsville. And if they could keep winning, then they would potentially play in the consolation
Yeah,
championship.
and very rarely have they ever gone down there and gone 0-2.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you wouldn't it's just kind of the risk you take going to play in that field. By the way, there was an interesting, this is a complete aside, but I just happened to be trying to find the results from that tournament. And it was Bethalto, I think. They were playing Oakaville, okay, in the first round. And I guess they were the home team, Bethalto was, but they had had a home game the night before. And so they have these gold alternate jerseys that they wear. It's not their away jerseys, but they wore them, and nothing was said until the beginning of the second half, which at which point a technical was assessed, and the other team got to shoot a couple of free throws, and their coach was pretty vocal afterwards about, this, he was not happy about it. And I get it, right? Like if you're going to enforce something like that, it needs to happen
That's
at
the
the
start of the
beginning of the
ball
game.
game.
But
That's
also,
somebody bringing it up in half. That's what happened.
but also, just I don't know, just like if you don't want the burden to be on the families to get those uniforms clean before the game the next day, then take them home and do it. Like, I mean, there's an easy way to avoid that. But
Or you
anyway,
could be like a really good Christmas tournament I know where people do uniforms.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I understand the frustration, but anyway, that's just a little aside.
Yeah.
I'm gonna save NTC girls for last because their tournament's
Okay.
coming up, so we'll get into that.
Uh,
Um, and so I guess by that token, we should probably go to Apollo next. And I'm going to start with the Effingham boys, and I'm not going to linger on this too much because it was, not a fun week. They went to Newton, lost by 14. Uh, Caden Nichols scored his 1,000th point in that game.
on a dunk.
Yeah, it was a lob too, wasn't it? It was
I don't know. I know it
it
was a
was an
dunk.
all. It was. I saw video of it. It was an alley oop. It was pretty sweet. And then they had turn around and go to Taylorville on Thursday night. And, that's one of the two teams that they had beaten up to this point. Robinson had already avenged an earlier season loss to Effingham. That was last week. And then they go to Taylorville, and you're thinking, well, here's your chance, here's your chance to kind of, get a good taste in your mouth before you have to go to this very good Salem Invitational next week.
Yes.
And I don't know what happened to Taylorville between the first time that those two teams played this season and Effingham got the win and Thursday night, but they were a completely different team. I don't know how they have only won two games at this point, if they've been playing that way for very long at all. But I'm telling you, they beat Effingham by 21, and it wasn't even that close because there was a running clock for
Yeah,
essentially
they
the
had
entire
running
fourth
clock.
quarter.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how many times they'd get a defensive rebound, Taylorville would just throw it down floor and somebody would be waiting for it for a layup. Like it must have happened, no joke, 10 times. Like they were just run and gun, beating Effingham down the floor. And I don't even think that Effingham was, I'm not trying to say Effingham was dogging it, okay? I'm just saying that Taylorville was playing 110 miles an hour and it
That
was
sounds like
working
the
very well.
Charlie Schwarman days of shooting nothing but layups is the only shots you're allowed to shoot.
So listen, Taylorville's 2-15, Effingham's 2-19. Um, I don't think Taylorville's done winning games yet, though. I think that they may bite a few people here if they can continue to do that. We kind of,
Yeah.
it's good to see them make that improvement, but I wish they had waited till after Effingham came to town to kind of sort of adjust their complete outlook on the game. But that was a tough one. Matt and I went down there for that game, and it just didn't go the way I think anybody necessarily expected it to. If any, I
Sure.
mean, I would have just expected it to be a competitive game, right? And it wasn't a competitive game at all. It was
Right.
pretty. Taylorville just dominated it. So Effingham's got to go to Salem this week. Um, and listen, that's a tough. This is a tough field. They got to play Centralia to start in the Salem
Who
tournament.
got beat this weekend?
Did they?
Yes, Mount Vernon beat them.
Well, Mount Vernon's in this tournament too, right? So,
They're talking a potential rematch next week at the tournament.
well, just looking at the field, I think they're not knowing very much about, most of the schools in it because they're bigger schools that we don't pay much attention to, that aren't really in the area. It didn't, just looking at the records, it didn't seem like, it
Right.
seems like that rematch could be a pretty decent possibility,
And
but
those schools don't like each other, Whitey.
yeah, I know. It's a I don't know. Is it a fun rivalry? I'm not sure. It's probably fun at home.
I don't
Probably
know.
nasty at
I've
home.
only watched part of it once.
I've been in the
I don't know.
building down at Salem for some of those championship games between your Mount Vernons, your Centralias, I mean, you get Triad in there sometimes. You get, you know, some of those other bigger Southern schools.
Yeah,
There can be a
Edwardsville
lot
had a
of
nice run
tension.
down there.
There can be a lot of tension in that building.
Yes, there can, and it's good. I once watched an Effingham Cahokia game in 1980. First loss for the Hearts that night.
Mhm.
Delved out by John Collins, future EIU Hall of Famer, I believe, and beat Effingham by a couple points.
So Effingham's got to play Centralia. Then they would play either Salem or Champaign Central in the next game, depending on
And
how that.
Champaign Central's not as good as Champaign Centennial. So
No, and I'm not sure what happens there. If Effingham can't get past Centralia, then they would have to play twice on Saturday. If they were to win that game, they would play Friday and then Saturday. But like we said, Centralia is really, really, really good. So that's a tough draw. Charleston's the only other local-ish team that's in that field, and they got to play Mount Vernon on Thursday to start the tournament. So they're probably looking at being on the consolation side of the bracket as well.
right,
Um, I want to check on Effingham's schedule real quick because I thought there was one more game in there, and I don't want to be wrong.
they have
Yeah,
Dietrich
they
this
play
week.
Diederik on Tuesday, so they go to Diederik before playing that Centralia game on Wednesday. And listen, that's not going to be an easy one. I mean, that's a lot of years Effingham would just kind of outclass Diederik, I think, just on a physical level. Um, Not this year, I mean, Diederik's got one of the more physically talented teams they've had in a while, and they're pretty good. So that's gonna be a tough one for Effingham too. So so yeah, we'll see, but obviously it continues to be a challenging year for Effingham, and I think we can leave it at that. It was as far as the Effingham girls go, they had a big game on their schedule this past week. They had Taylorville coming into town in what was essentially a game that Effingham had to win if they wanted to have any sort of chance to get
Right,
back into the Apollo race.
right.
Taylorville,
Taylorville already beat them once, correct?
yes, Taylorville and Mattoon had each beaten Effingham already, and so Effingham with two losses, and Taylorville sitting undefeated at the top, and Mattoon one loss at the top. You pretty much know you can't lose another game if you want to catch either one. I mean, weird things could happen, I suppose, but like it would have to be pretty darn weird for it not to work out that way. So you need this win, and they just didn't get it. Taylorville beat them by 13. Effingham got within a bucket a couple of times, I think, in the third quarter, but just couldn't quite get over the hump. And I don't know, I mean, I just Taylorville shot well at the beginning of the game. Effingham came out playing the zone, and Taylorville was hitting three-pointers like crazy. Once Effingham switched to man, they really did a pretty good job bottling up. And Taylorville had the size advantage too. Like they had a pretty big girl in the paint that uh, did some nice things at times, but it just is kind of like with the T-Town game last night for the boys. It got close in the second half and you couldn't quite get over the hump, but where the game was probably truly lost was in the first quarter because you fell behind by enough that you left yourself a big comeback to make. And you did most of that work, but you just had too far to go, right?
You spend a lot of energy to get back to there,
Yeah.
and then it seems like the other team will regroup, and then it's hard. It's hard to come back um, when you're down. It seems like so many times you work and work and work and work and get there, and then you run out of gas.
Yeah, but then,
Not always.
Effingham did bounce back and they had to go to Paris the next night and beat them by 6. Now, Paris is not, at least just based on the scores, I haven't seen Paris, but based on the scores, I would say Paris is not quite where they were last year, but still
Exactly.
good. Uh, but it's still a good win to go there and get it, especially the night after you had to play a big conference game. I don't care who
Right.
you're playing. Back-to-back nights is going to be a challenge, and at the end of the day, Effingham they're 3-3 in the Apollo, but they're 17-4 overall. And they 2 losses to Taylorville, 1 to Mattoon. Uh, there's nothing to really hang your head over on any of that. It's just the Apollo is probably not going to happen for him this year, and the way Mattoon has kind of been lately, if Taylorville can just knock them off, they're probably going to run the table in that league, and deservedly so. So, Effingham's got looking at this week for Effingham. Uh, that can't be right. Oh, they've got a tournament this week. Yeah, they're playing. They're playing in that Vandalia
I was gonna
tournament.
say that's a Vandalia.
Yeah, because I don't have anything on my schedule that I wrote keep on my spreadsheet for them, but I think that's because I didn't have the schedule for that tournament yet. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna talk and I'm gonna scroll on the radio station website and I'm gonna pretend like I wasn't completely unprepared.
This is
Uh,
where we throw our show producers under the bus.
um, why don't we do this? Why don't we instead talk about St. Anthony boys and I'll kind of
All
do
right.
that in the background and we'll let you know who the Effingham girls play in
Well,
a
I
little.
know I listened to your St. Anthony boys game against Modern Day,
They
and
just
I talked to Cody about that last night. He said we played really, really well,
they beat
and I guess some of the Modern Day faithful were a little grumpy and felt like they weren't getting a fair shake by the men in stripes. And Cody said that laughingly, and I said, Cody, the hardest place I ever coached against a team was Modern Day. I pulled my starters in the second quarter down there once, Whitey, because I had a kid who was going to dunk one and got pushed in the middle of the back, and the ball went right into the bottom of the rim and the backboard, no call. I called timeout and I took my starters out because at that point, we were good and I wasn't going to risk getting hurt. They beat us by 2 or 3 at the tournament, and then they turn around and I think we got beat by 30. And I know some people back in the day on IHSS said we weren't a very good team. We got throttled. We were overrated. I said that's okay. I wasn't going to risk anybody getting hurt that night because
um
it was the worst I've ever seen as a coach. What I felt like officiating was against me.
listen, I think that teams that are getting beat up hard and consistently and without any let up for 32 minutes are going to feel like there should have been more fouls called.
Sure. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
But but I think that teams that do it well are
Mm-hmm.
going to make you feel that way. And that doesn't mean that that was the reality of the game that was happening. That just means that it just means that the other team was physically a lot better than you were. Okay.
Right.
I mean, you see it all the time. T-Town will have somebody come in and their fans will be losing their minds because T-Town's only got, 3 fouls called on them by the end of the half. And it's been a physical game, but by the same token, you haven't seen a lot of hand checking, not a lot of reaching, not a lot of hacks on shots. You just see guys that are bodying up. They're staying with somebody, and when that guy tries to make his move to the basket, there's somebody in his way. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not a foul. Okay. That's not a foul. And if you called those fouls, then we'd be out of players by the end of the second quarter.
I'll tell you a game that is not going to be for the weak of heart, and you will be doing it on the radio, is when T-Town goes to St. Anthony, because the both teams will guard you
we're kind of
and will
burying the
guard
lead
you
here.
hard.
By the
What's
way,
that?
we're kind of burying the lead here. I mean, I think you've probably gathered, but St. Anthony won that game over Mater Dei by 33 points,
Yeah,
78 to 45. Another one where you go into it, and I know the Mater Dei has
they're down a little bit.
they're down a little bit. Their record was 9-10 coming into it, but they had that same really high strength of schedule. They played one of the tougher schedules in
Yeah,
all
but
of Class 2A.
I talked to a person about them this week. Um, they're not the modern day teams of the past.
Well, and
I
you sort
don't feel like they don't guard as well as they've guarded in the past. Just they're just not the same right now.
Yeah, I mean, you just sort of condition yourself to not expect to see them come into town and get manhandled like that.
Right? No, exactly. And T
You
Town
just
plays them, I think, next week.
Yeah, they do. It's definitely on their schedule. I don't know about next week. We already
I thought it was coming up.
it's the 26th, Friday the 26th.
And
So
is that at modern day?
no, it's at
Okay.
T-Town.
Okay.
Um, I will say Mater Dei had a kid that well, they had two guys get hurt on one play. Colin Westendorf went to the
Yeah.
rim.
Kid bit through his lip, I heard you say.
Well, that's and I should have asked Matt last night because he found the kid's mom after the game and asked her exactly what happened. But that was kind of what we were. I mean, he was bleeding out his mouth. That's all I know. And his mom, first of all, they had a guy twist his ankle on that play too. They got two guys hurt on one play. Um, that guy stayed in the game. He was fine. The guy who was bleeding out the mouth went running off the floor. They were dealing with him, and then you see his parents run out of the gym door like they're getting, and we're like, well, they must be taking him to the hospital, right? They must be going to get stitches or something. And
I
then
heard
all
you
of a
decided. I
sudden,
hear you go, oh, he checked back in.
and then all of a sudden, the kid's at the scores table checking back into the game. And then his mom, a couple of minutes later, comes walking back into the gym, kind of shrugging her shoulders, like, well, I guess we're not leaving after all. So, uh, tremendous toughness, like it'd be pretty easy to say, you know what, we're down 26 in the second half. I don't need any more of this tonight. I've got a hole in my mouth that's dripping blood all over the place, and we should
Yeah.
just. But gamers, I'll give them that, but they got thumped, and that was one of two big wins for St. Anthony last week because they also went to Neoga and did what you expect them to do against Neoga, beat them by 31 points. Although I heard that was, Neoga hung tough for a while, was my understanding. They played about as well as they could in that game, but at the end of the day, just you know, St. Anthony is just a lot better this
Who
year.
the Bulldogs? Who the Bulldogs have this?
Flora comes in on Tuesday, and then they go. They've got back-to-back nights where they go to Windsor Stew Straws on Friday, which that game's at Windsor. We um, will likely have that one on the radio, depending on what Effingham does. If they're in their first game down at the Salem tournament, if Effingham were to beat Centralia, I think they would play again on Friday. But well, I know, but I mean, I understand the likelihood of that. And again, that's got as much to do with Centralia as anything. I don't want anyone from Effingham to get mad at me, but
Yeah,
Centralia is
no, Centralia is a dominant team right now.
But if that's the case, if Effingham's not playing Friday, then we would have that St. Anthony Windsor Stew Straws game, which is a conference game. I mean, St. Anthony is having a far better year than Windsor Stew Straws. They've obviously got a lot of holes to fill. From last year, as do a lot of national trail teams, by the way. A lot of
Yeah,
teams just really have been having to figure a lot of things out. The St.
lost a
Anthony
lot of
didn't have,
kids.
yeah, St. Anthony didn't have to do that this year. Um, and then they have St. Joseph Ogden coming in on Saturday. So St. Joe, we've talked about this before, heading into their matchup with T-Town, that they're not quite the team they were last year, but they're still a pretty highly regarded uh,
Right.
2A team in the state. So it's not going to be a picnic, but and especially playing them in your second game in as many days. But that's what St. Anthony's got. And then, of course, the NTC tournament will be the following week, and the Bulldogs are the number one seed in that one. Um, Altamont got the 2 seed. The seedings are out there, and Altamont had a good week as well. I mean, they beat Central A&M.
Who's three? Brownstown or Dietrich?
Um, it's it is
I
it's
mean, Brownstown, St. Elmo.
San Elmo Brownstown. Yeah,
St. Elmo, Brownstown.
yeah. It's let me see here. Um, no, it is Diedrich. I'm sorry, Diedrich, and
Okay.
then San Elmo Brownstown got the 4. And you could have taken your pick between those.
Sure.
I don't think those are wrong choice. But Altamont is coming on pretty strong. They had North Clay Friday, and North Clay's having a they're only 5-11, and you look at that and you say, well, they must not be very good, but they've really played. They play a killer schedule, and they have hung tough with some pretty good teams. Altamont had them down 20 some points at halftime. It was like 40 to less than 20. I know that, and ended up beating them by 21 points. And I think Altamont's just sort of rounding into shape. And there's another team that had a lot of holes to fill. And it seems like
Yeah.
they're starting to figure some things out. They got Dylan Elam back. They sat him for a little bit with a knee thing. And so going into NTC week in a couple of weeks, that could make for some
Yeah.
interesting matchups. But St. Noble
Saw
Brownstown.
Coach Nieberg was there last night. Got a nice little handshake from him and a
Mhm,
bro
mhm.
bump. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. St. Noble Brownstown had St. Anthony down at some point pretty far into their matchup a few weeks ago, and just sort of, from my understanding, just sort of came apart in the fourth quarter. But they're a good senior laden team, so they can make some noise. Dieter can make some noise. Like
Sure.
there's
Be a
there's
good NTC week.
yeah, there's especially those, you get into some of your later matchups, maybe some of the early round matchups will pretty much go like kind of how you think they will, but I think you could see some pretty good ones.
Yeah. I think you can have some good Thursday, Friday games.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, by the way, real quick, shifting gears back to Effingham girls. They're the number one seed in that Vandalia tournament, and they do start play tomorrow. And this is one of those things that happens, and it's out of anyone's control. But I don't think anybody likes to see it. But Salem's JV is the number 8 seed in that tournament, and so that's who Effingham's going to play in their first game. Which
Hmm?
I think if you organize a tournament, or if you're that number 1 seed, you don't really want to. You'd rather, you don't
No,
want to do
it's a
that.
lose-lose proposition.
Yeah.
We had two teams pull out late on us in Christmas tournament, and when you look at contingencies, that becomes a contingency. And a couple years ago, I know T-Town JV went to
They went to the Vandalia
Vandalia
boys
and
tournament, finished like third place. Yeah.
played for got third place, didn't they?
Yeah, they got third place.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
I was told really they should have won the semifinal game.
Um,
Been playing for the ship.
the problem is that that's like kind of embarrassing for everybody else there, right? That,
Yeah. Well, good JV group, so I think it would have been these kids that are seniors now.
yeah, absolutely. So Effingham plays Monday against Salem's JV. When they win that, then they'll play either Salem or Mascuda. Um, and then after that, then the championship would be Saturday, or the third place game, which they're going to get on the winner side of the bracket there with playing, and so
Right.
they'll play sometime Saturday for either third place or the title. So there it is. I found it. Okay, and that leads us to the final thing that we will talk about tonight, which is of course NTC girls. Their tournament is this week. It starts tomorrow. Everything's at Beecher City, and I'll go over those matchups. But Altamont's the number 1 seed in that tournament, and they had a really big win last night. They had the NTC CIC shootout over at Altamont. And speaking of Tuscola, you had Tuscola come in to play Altamont to cap off that day, and you're talking 2 top 5 teams in the state right there. Okay.
Yeah, aren't their girls undefeated?
Tuscolas.
Weren't I? They were
If they had lost once before, yeah,
okay.
they had lost once before, but you know, they were ranked a little higher than Altamont, but pretty much a pick 'em game, and Altamont won what was essentially a pick 'em game by 1 point, 53 to 52. Um, that's 17 in a row, I believe, for the Altamont girls.
The fighting cars.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, is that it's 17 straight for them, and just Grace Nelson is, of course, having the kind of season that she always has. She's averaging 30 some points, 31 points a game. But what's really different about this Altamont team this year, and I think you probably got to give Craig a ton of credit for it, even though he may or may not want to really have this conversation with us. But it's the complementary players that are turning them from a team with a standout player and some, decent complementary pieces to a special team. Okay,
Mhm.
a team that can do something really spectacular come postseason time. It's your Kaylee Lurkins and your Peyton Osteens, that are that have elevated their game to the point where you might be able to slow Nelson down and keep her in the 20s,
But
but
other kids are going to score, and that's the
other
big
kids are
thing.
going to
And,
hit some
and
shots. Yes.
that's cool. And so, who does St. Anthony play in that shootout?
St. Anthony's not in it. St.
Oh, they're
Anthony.
not in the girls. Okay.
Nope, they're not. So you had just real quick, I can just tell you, and it's not all CIC either because Neoga played Vandalia, and they did that last year too. And Vandalia is not in, they're not in that conference. Vandalia is
Right.
in South Central Conference, but you had Cowden Herrick Beecher City. They beat Warrensburg Latham by 6, 48-42. Neoga beat Vandalia by 6, 71-65. Diedrich was the only NTC team to lose yesterday. They went into overtime against Shelbyville and lost 63-60. Windsor Stew Straws beat Meridian 47-34. Brownstown St. Elmo beat Central A&M 46-35. Now Central A&M is good, okay? They they absolutely destroyed Neoga the first week of the season. Now, do I think that that would necessarily go as lopsided this time around? I'd hope not, but Central A&M is very good. And that's a good win for Brownstown St. Elmo, which is, if they win one more game, they're going to be at 20 for the second straight year. Okay, they're the 3 seed in that tournament coming up. They're a really good team. And then of course Altamont beats Tuscola 53-52. So it was a nice day for the National Trail girls. I wrote up a little thing and posted it on my Facebook today
Yeah, I
actually.
saw that. I was like, wow. I mean, that's like the old Whitey.
Yeah, well, I just kind of felt like it needed to be said, but right now, NTC girls, if you don't count their games against each other in tournaments and stuff, but their non-conference winning percentage is 729. Okay.
Very good.
Um, they've been really good against out of conference schools for the last 3 years, but that's obviously up to another level. So it's a really good small school girls basketball conference, and so that's why if you got a chance to get over to Beecher City this week, I mean, there's going to be some quality games, especially later in the week, and that they start tomorrow. They play 4 games. South Central is the 8 seed. North Clay is the 9 seed. They'll play to start things off. That's a play-in game. Then St. Anthony's the 2 seed. They'll play Windsor Stew Straws. That's the 7. Then you have number 3 Brownstown St. Elmo against number 6 CHBC, and then you got number 4 Neoga against number 5 Diedrich. And Altamont, the top seed, will play either South Central or North Clay when they start Tuesday. But then that all culminates into your final day of games on Saturday. And you could get, if it all goes, according to Hoyle, as you like to say,
Sure.
you could get a St. Anthony Altamont rematch in the championship game. And Altamont would, St. Anthony would be full strength. They didn't have Nancy Ruhal the first time around when those two teams
Correct.
played. And so I'm sure, like I said in the thing I wrote, I'm sure that St. Anthony would like to think that they could flip that outcome if they had everybody. But I also know that Craig was disappointed when he found out that he was going to be
Well,
playing.
you want to beat them at their best.
Yeah,
So that'll be a good. If they get there, that'll be a good ball game.
yeah, but like I said, you got Brownstown and Yoga certainly capable of making some noise. Diedrich has kind of been they've been struggling lately, but they've got some good players. They've got the Britain girl who's 1,000 point. I mean, there's so many 1,000 point scorers in this
Yeah.
conference. Like, uh, almost every team has somebody who has done it. In fact, maybe every team does at this point. Not Cowden does not. Cowden Herrick doesn't have anyone left that has crossed that plateau, but I think every other team in the conference has at least one person who has done it. And I think part of that's just because more kids
So
get.
many of them play as freshmen. Stacy
Yeah,
Vonderheid's the anomaly.
yeah. It
Even
used
though she played as a freshman, but she wasn't
she wasn't
scoring.
really a big scoring
Right.
option until her junior
Right.
year, which makes what she's
Exactly
done,
right.
I think, even a little,
Mhm.
a little more special. But like, yeah, it used to be it was a big deal if you had like a sophomore getting varsity minutes. Okay.
Right.
And
Right.
now you got kids all the time that are playing varsity minutes from the time they get into the program.
Don't
Number
we have to refer to her as friend of the show, Stacy
friend
Vonderheid?
of the show, Stacy Vonderheide.
There you
Yes,
go. There you go.
absolutely.
She's earned the moniker.
And we are fortunate to have her as a friend of the show. She's
I know.
and
She's tweeted. I was a little concerned. I couldn't tell if it was being respectful or brown nosing, but she sent a tweet out and called us Mr. White and Mr. Wilson. I
you
haven't been called Mr. Wilson since I was a PE teacher and kids saw reruns of Dennis the Menace.
Yeah, but by all accounts, a great kid.
Oh
No
yeah.
piece of feedback that I've gotten from that interview has not included some mention of what a nice kid, what a good
Oh
kid she
yeah.
is. So, that's NTC girls tournament ought to be a lot of fun, and I think you go over there, you get a peek at two or three, maybe even four teams that could 4 or 5 teams
Yeah.
that could be playing for regional championships. Like
Sure. You're exactly right. Depends
so.
on how things shake out here in about, I think the seeds will come out in 2 weeks.
Yep. So if you can, you know, if you don't have a washer and dryer being delivered to your house tomorrow morning, then get over there to Beecher City. If you're me and you're stuck in your house for that 4 hour window, then you may not be able to get over and see as much as you wanted to.
Or come down and buy a car from me and start Monday off really good.
We'll buy a car and then
Just
drive it over to
saying.
Beecher City.
There you go. Good thinking, Whitey.
They start early though. I think the first game is in the morning. I know that the last game of the day is at 2:30, so they're starting pretty
Yeah,
early
that's
over there.
good.
Oh man.
That's everything. You know what? It's cold. It's bad cold. I was walking out of a restaurant in Champaign to my car, and we're walking dead into the wind. And I was bundled. My eyes hurt. My eyes hurt. I was so cold. And I only had to walk from, like free throw line to free throw line. It wasn't very far, but it
Well,
was not pleasant, Whitey.
and
Not at all.
it's the first time we've had to deal with actual legitimate
Oh,
winter
yeah.
weather this year, this winter.
I'm not looking forward to tomorrow at work, but I'll be prepared.
You're gonna have like a big Eskimo coat, you know?
No. The key word is layering.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, by the way, have the Cowboys stopped the Packers from scoring yet? I know the game's over. I just wonder if
You know
I think
what?
the clocks.
It actually got tightened up a little bit at the end. 48 to
No,
32 was the final.
really. They must start giving Dallas like 10 points for a touchdown.
I don't know.
That's
Yeah.
that's three possessions. That's two touchdowns and 2 point. No.
Listen, Mike, that's a real damned if you do, damned if you don't matchup for me. I don't
Back in the old days, who was it used to say? Was it who was the ESPN and that analyst who always used to say they took them to the woodshed?
I don't know. But that game, yeah, wasn't near as close as that final score would even lead you to believe, and it was
No,
still a
no,
two score game.
it was not. And I know a lot of Cowboy fans who aren't very happy. I know one Packer fan who's already chirping in my phone, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, I would have liked for the Packers to have to at least like. There's people my age that don't know what it's like to root for a. There's Packers fans my age who don't know what it's like to root for a team that doesn't have a decent quarterback. Okay, and that's been my entire
Hey, you know
life.
what?
That's my
All
entire life.
Bears fans, all Bears fans know what it's like.
I
Because
actually,
very few Bear fans were alive when Sid Luckman was playing. So
I
it's
actually do believe the Bears have a decent quarterback. I just don't know that what their plans are for him.
yeah,
So
I understand. Well, they'll mess it up.
yeah,
Hey,
I
the
I
Jared Goff Matthew Stafford Bowl, Detroit scored. They're up 7-0, but the Rams are marching.
I may watch it. I may not. I
Sam
really,
Laporta is playing. I didn't think he was playing, so in our family pick 'em, I picked the Rams because I thought Laporta was out. He's such a big part of the Lion offense, and he's playing.
yeah. He's an all pro. He's an all pro man or a
He
pro
is
bowler.
good. He is having one of the best rookie seasons ever, and I saw him dunk in the St. Thanksgiving tournament at St. Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Greg brings it up all the time about how we saw him play for Highland against Effingham,
Well,
and
yeah, in the football game, he was kind of, hey, you go out and we're just going to throw it.
yeah, he was a man amongst boys. You just throw it to the back of the end zone and let him stand over the top of whatever
Yeah.
DB had the misfortune of trying to cover him, and yeah. Listen, the only thing that matters in terms of NFL is that I got second place in my rotisserie league this
There
year.
you go. Well, congratulations.
Which is like the first time I've probably ever made money in that league since we started it
Well,
15 years ago.
I'm
Uh,
looking for an invitation for lunch then.
well, listen, it's going to cover the entry fee to our baseball league and then to the football league next year. So I don't have
Wow. I,
to. So I don't have to explain to my wife why I'm taking $100 out of the ATM. Like
I,
that's a
our,
conversation I don't like to have.
our family football thing, I usually am pretty competitive in it, but I lost my 6 point game this week because you rank them, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You just pick the winners. So I lost my 6 pointer. I thought the Packers were too young and be, deer in headlights, which I was proven wrong. But everyone who picked the Packers to win also either picked the Browns or the Dolphins. So maybe there's, as in Dumb and Dumber, maybe you're telling me there is a chance.
I all I'm looking for, I scanned Twitter real quick to see if Mike McCarthy's been fired yet. I thought maybe he'd not even make it
You
off the.
know what? I don't think he's the only one. I think your defensive coordinator would be gone too. You talk about paper lace, baby.
Yeah, right before we started recording, I watched one of Green Bay's tight ends go catch a pass out on the far sideline. There was
I could have
nobody within
walked in
30
the end
yards
zone with
of
that
him.
one. I
He
could have
was
walked in the end zone with that one.
he was standing there waiting for the ball to come to him. It's insane. I mean, you don't usually got to watch a college game to see somebody that wide open. That's
Hey,
all.
I saw someone shared a Twitter. I call it Twitter. It's not X, a tweet because you can't say an eat or whatever it is, an eight. So some guy was bitching about the Buffalo game being called off for today and said, "Come on, do you think they postponed D-Day because of the weather?"
And they
Yes, they did.
did. They did.
Yeah, they did.
I saw the
They did
same
move it
thing.
back a day. So,
Yeah, well,
hey, dumbass, get an idea
he's one of
before you
those.
tweet that.
He works for Clay Travis, so he's not
Yeah,
too.
well, that explains everything.
Yeah. Also, Illinois is now 2-12 in its last 14 games against Maryland. I think that's.
Yeah, I didn't even hear that on the radio or see it when I got home. Because was Illinois the only top 10 team this week not to lose going into today?
Pretty damn close.
I thought that's what someone said. They were the only top 10 team not to lose.
They just I don't know what it is about
They were
Maryland.
leading the last time I checked my phone.
Well, they came out and played really well to begin, but I don't know. I had to I didn't watch the second half because I had to take my son had his travel team had some hitting in Effingham today, so we went there and I
Pretty
did
cold. You get bees in the bats outside today, Whitey.
well. We were indoors. We were indoors.
Oh, indoor hitting.
Oh yeah, no, not out in the elements. I think that would have been pretty crazy stuff. Although my son probably would have told me he wanted to do it. And I probably would have said we went out and played catch on Christmas Day because he got a new glove and he had to use it. So
It was warm on Christmas Day. That's not telling me anything.
Ah, it was not. I mean, it was warm for
Whitey,
December, but it wasn't warm.
because Zach Wilson said, "Hey, I'm going to go hit a baseball today." You know what I'd said? "Hey, good. I'm going to be in the car watching."
Well, I don't know. Was he 6 when he said that? You know what I'm saying? It's okay. Well, we're rambling. Next week we'll take a more in-depth look at the upcoming
Yeah,
NBC
and
boys
we had a
tournament.
couple things we were trying to get guest wise.
Yeah.
One, I think we'll get. Well, I know we'll get. It's just trying to get it, work the logistics out. We ran into a birthday party today. But yeah, we'll work on some things. So, couple options for next week, really. So we'll have to see.
And so that'll be listen, there'll be a lot to talk about between
Oh yeah.
I mean NTC girls playing and the NTC boys getting ready to play their tournament.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
you know, should be a packed show. So be looking for it. But I think for now we've probably gone on long enough. So I'll let you
We're good. My
get on
wife
with
just
your
made some chili, so I have to go warm up.
sounds like a plan. Well, Mike, we will talk to you later. But again, fun night at T-Town last night.
That
Encourage
was
you to, if you can find the video of those proceedings on that Teutopolis School's Facebook page, I encourage you to do so. Some good moments in there. But glad we got a chance to talk about it. Glad I got a chance to be there.
yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
until then, until next week, why don't we sign off and we will re-adjourn this time next week or thereabouts.
All right, see you, Whitey.
All right, take it easy.